going to start the video for our friends that aren't here. So when we're reading, sometimes we have to visualize. And this says visualizing. So if I add ing, that means it's happening right now. So we are learning to create pictures in our minds as we read using headings. So headings are like the title. Illustrations are like maybe if there's any pictures. And any really big words. Okay? So maybe like vocabulary words. So we are going to be able to find these vocabulary words, kind of like we did yesterday in Little Flap Learn Supply. We're going to look for big vocabulary words that we don't know, and we're going to use the words around it to visualize what does that mean. So one of the words yesterday was peered. And when you read the story, who was peering out the nest? Addie?
Little Flap was.
Little Flap was. And if you didn't know what peered means, you kind of had to use the words around it, or you had to look at the illustrations or the pictures. And when you looked at, John, when you looked at the picture of Little Bird, what did it look like he was doing, Ellie? Remember that page where he was peering out the nest? What did it look like he was doing? Was he sitting in it? Was he? Well, he was maybe not necessarily sitting in it.
He was standing.
Standing. Was he kind of standing at the back of the nest, the middle of the nest, or was he standing like in the front of the nest? What do you think, Riley? The front of the nest. So when Little Flap was peering out the nest, we used the pictures, the illustrations, and we noticed that he's standing at the front of the nest. And then what else was he doing? He just wasn't standing there. What was he doing, Arya?
He was trying to learn how to fly.
He was trying to learn how to fly. So what was he doing if he was trying to learn how to fly? Brooklyn?
He was looking over his nest.
Yeah, like over the edge of the nest, right? So if he's peering, Tyson, he's looking over the edge of the nest and he's looking down, right? So we had to visualize that in our head, and we could use the words around it, and we could also use the pictures or the illustrations to help us figure it out, okay? So, what is visualizing? It's when you create in your mind detailed pictures about what the characters or the setting as you read it. So yesterday when we read Little Flap Learn Supply, we visualized Little Flap in our mind as he was peering out of his nest and learning how to fly. Okay? And we need to look for those big vocabulary words too. And those big vocabulary words will help us give some detailed images in our head, okay? Now, why do we do this? We do this to become a better reader, and we get to link new words together, okay? And it also makes it more interesting. If I said Little Flap looked out of his nest, does that sound very interesting? Not really. If I said Little Flap peered out of his nest, which one sounds better, Ingrid? Or more interesting?
The second one.
The second one. So that is why we kind of use bigger vocabulary words, because they're more interesting. Okay? All right. So here's our first step. So when we're reading, we need to read the text or the words carefully and focus on what the author describes the characters in the setting. So really focus on what the author is telling us. Okay, that's our first step. Our second step is to look for those descriptive words, those big words, those vocabulary words, and maybe underline them. Today in your story, some of these big words are not underlined, but you might want to underline them. I know the teacher's one has them underlined, so maybe Mrs. Shaw, Mrs. Murphy will help you by finding some very big descriptive words, and we should underline them. Okay? And then you need to create an image. That's the third step. Create an image. What are you picturing in your mind? Think about how the characters look, where the story is taking place or set, and what important events are happening. Okay? So picture that in your mind. And this is the last step, is sentence. Create sentences to directly describe the images in your mind. So this is if we're gonna write it. So if we had to write about little flap peering out the nest, you could use some of those pictures in your mind to help you write that sentence. We're not gonna do this last step today. Today we're just gonna answer some questions, but if you have to write a sentence, you can visualize in your mind what you're trying to say to put it down on paper in your writing. Okay? All right. And then I forgot, there's one more step. Review it. You guys know what review is?
Yeah.
No? So review is to practice it again. So once you have it down on your paper, look at it and maybe reread it and practice it and make sure it makes sense. Make sure that is what you want to have on your paper, okay? All right. We're going to skip this last one because this is actually for the writing prompts, and we don't need to do writing prompts. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to practice visualization on this story. We are going to get into our groups from yesterday, and we're going to go to the same place. So Miss Shaw's group will be on the right. Just, you leave it for a second, okay, so I can tell my remote learners.
You
Okay.
said next time I could.
Next week we'll switch. Next week, okay? So this week, if you're with Michelle, you're with her all week, okay? And then next week, we'll switch groups. Okay? It just makes it a lot easier. We'll go 1 week at a time. All right. So as a whole group, you're gonna read this, and you're gonna take turns reading like you did yesterday with Little Flap Learns to Fly. You're going to read the story or the passage. This is called a passage. This is not a test, no. This is, we're just doing it together, okay?
Let's just read it.
Yeah.
A moment then.
Oh, you're so funny, Lewis. Not a test. Then, you are going to use the visualization strategy. So you're going to visualize in your head what is happening. You're looking for your big vocabulary words. So Mrs. Murphy put these up, I think yesterday. I don't know if you noticed that Mrs. Murphy put up the vocabulary words, but rescue, perfectly afraid, feared, depend, action, secret, and nervously. If you find them in here, I would underline those. Or box them maybe. Maybe we should box them. Okay? Then, so visualize strategy to picture in your mind what is happening in the story, okay? So you're going to read this page, and then there is a back page. And can you guys see a bicycle that's built for 2 people? If they're not people, what are they, Wyatt?
There's a rabbit and a squirrel.
Yeah, a rabbit and a squirrel. So we're going to learn why there's a bicycle built for 2. Then you're going to answer these 3 questions. Part A. You don't need to reread, Mrs. Shull. You don't need to reread the passage and answer. Sometimes you read this one time and you're like, I can't find the answers. And so sometimes you do need to reread it. But we're going to try the strategy where we try to go back and find it, the answer. And then you can underline the answer. So that's another strategy. And sometimes we highlight. Maybe I should get out my highlighters. You guys want to highlight?
Yeah.
Okay, I do have highlighters. I'll get out my highlighters. Because I did that on Miss Shaw's copy. See how I highlighted where I found the answer? I'm not going to show you. But
You showed us already.
I will get out my highlighters. And you guys, when you answer the questions, I want you to go back and find it. Where is it in the story? Okay? So highlight where the answers are, because that's a very good strategy. Is sometimes you don't remember after reading it the first time. Maybe you didn't comprehend it. Maybe you didn't understand it. It's okay to go back and look at it. Now, at the bottom, there's a part B. To work with a partner, we are not going to do that. So you can, if it's on there, and actually, guys, guess what? I think I forgot. Oh, guess what Mrs. Murphy did? I was smart. I just take that off. So it's not even on there. So if Mrs. Shola or Mrs. Murphy has the part B, you're not going to do that. You're only going to do part A, 1, 2, and 3. Okay? All right. There is one more thing. Also, if you can look for words that end in ing or ed or s, remember we're working on those inflectional endings, can you underline them? Because there's a bunch in here. Okay? So underline the inflectional endings, highlight where you find your answers, and circle any vocabulary words where you have to visualize. Think you guys can remember all that?
No.
If not,
No.
hopefully Mrs. Shaw and Mrs. Murphy can. Okay,